Welcome to the Book Flood Podcast. I am your host, Tom Nixon. Our guest today is Colby Sharp. Colby is a husband and father of five. He teaches fifth grade at Parma Elementary. Colby is the co-founder of Nerdy Book Club. He co-hosts the Yarn podcast with Travis Jonker. Colby co-authored Game Changer, Book Access for All Kids with Donalyn Miller, and is the editor of the Creativity Project, an Awesometastic Story Collection. A Commonsense guide to your classroom library written with Donalyn Miller is his latest book. Welcome, Colby.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your career trajectory from college to now, whatever you want to do.
Sure. When I was a high school senior, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Absolutely given zero thought to that for 17 plus years. And as a high school football player, every Friday we went and read to elementary students on game day. And I loved it. I remember reading in Miss Garnett's second grade class and then going and hanging out with the kids at recess. And I decided that fall that I wanted to be a teacher. Went the community college route, transferred to Western Michigan University, did my student teaching in Battle Creek, Michigan at Lakeview Schools. Was hired by Lakeview Community Schools, taught there for 6 years. And I am now in my 12th year at Parma Elementary, so my 18th year overall. And I teach in the same school that I went to as a kid.
Really? I would be curious how many people who have been a reading buddy kind of thing end up in teaching. Yeah. I know a bunch, including myself.
Yeah, it's pretty cool thing to do when you're growing up, and just seeing how powerful and special that book kid reader relationship can be.
Different is being a teacher now than in the past.
Well, I guess for my first 17 years, I had a lot of freedom and a lot of autonomy. And this year we moved to a pretty scripted curriculum. So that is a lot different. So I'm sure there's lots of different changes throughout the years, but this has been the biggest one for me, to go from just having the freedom to have what my kids need drive our instruction to having a book tell me what to do and say. So that's been a transition.
Been down that path, and it's not a path that works well for me at all, because yes, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so programs, there are some folks who my best guess is it probably makes them a better teacher, but that would not be me. And I suspect that would not be you either.
Yeah. And we're not like every single word, every single part of, it would take me all day to do one day of what's expected of me on this curriculum. So we're not quite that intense. And I know a lot of schools are, where if it's not in the book, you don't do it. And if it is in the book, you do it. So I'm thankful that we have a good literacy coach who's trying to support us in this transition. We have a principal who understands that we still have to do what's best for kids. But it is a lot, and it is a lot different.
What are some of your book picks for 24-25? What are you liking this year?
Yeah, my favorite book, I guess middle grade novel this year, is Jasmine Warga's A Strange Thing Happened in Cherry Hall. About a girl named Ramy whose mother works at, as a janitor at like an art museum, and a painting goes missing, which is a really big deal. Like, this painting is just gone. Very famous artist, painting's worth a lot of money. And Ramy is sitting in the room where the painting used to be. And she sees like this ghost, like this girl floating. And she, obviously it's pretty traumatizing, but she feels like she's seen this person before. And early in the book, you realize that this ghost was actually the kid from the painting. And Ramy goes on quite an adventure with another kid from school to try to figure out what's going on, what happened to the painting. Obviously her mom is kind of being as a suspect, so trying to clear her mom's name. But I love that book. It's a fun middle grade mystery. It's just over 200 pages. It's amazing. My favorite picture book is Spider in the Well by Jess Hannigan. It's a story of this poor boy who is just being taken advantage of by everyone in the town, and they make him do everything. And he, when the wishing well stops granting wishes, he has to investigate. And it's a book about deception and blackmail. And it's just so fun and weird. And one of those books that is just breaks the mold of picture books, which the kids love. And I guess my favorite graphic novel is We Are Big Time by Hannah Khan, which is based on a
Mm.
true story about an Islamic high school basketball team where all of the girls wear hijabs and how they're kind of awful at first, but then they get a lot better and it becomes like a big story nationwide and how other teams react to that. So those are probably my three quick picks for 2024.
Excellent. Are you a big graphic novels person?
Yeah, more than ever. They've always been huge with my students, but as life gets busier, I'm finding myself reading more of them, and they've gotten so much better. There's so many more. So I've read a ton of graphic novels this year, last couple of years. But yeah, I'm a huge fan. There's so many, I mean, because they're selling like wild. So the
Yeah.
publishers are finally starting to be able to catch up a little bit. And, I have a fourth and a first grader. So we've read all the Dogmans with them, all the Wimpy Kids with them, all the Cat Kids with them. So it's been fun. We read all the Amulets last year when a new Amulet came out, read all the Zeta the Space Girls. So getting a lot of comic reading in with my boys at bedtime, which has been pretty special.
Nice. Uh, are you big with audiobooks?
I am. So I don't read anything for grown-ups except for audiobooks. So I
Mm.
love nonfiction books for grown-ups on audio.
Yeah. For,
It's like
for
a
me, I have discovered. So I retired from the day job, and I thought, well, I'll have all sorts of time to read now. That has not been the case.
oh no,
But well, it's all good. But a friend got me into using audiobooks, and now I actually keep up a little bit. I don't really keep
nice,
up. It's too hard to keep up, but there's just so much good stuff
absolutely.
out there. A couple books that you've been the co-author on: Game Changer, about book access, my favorite book ever.
Aw, thanks, Tom.
I used to manage library services with 110 people, and I bought all of them a copy.
Wow,
And
thank you.
we did it as a read for the year. And Commonsense Guide to Your Classroom Library, also a very good book. You wrote both of those with Donalyn Miller, the book whisperer. How did that come about?
Well, we just became friends on, I guess, Twitter back in like 2011, maybe. During her summer book a day challenge where you would try to read a book and then you would tweet
Mm.
about it. And so we kind of met there. Then she at the time hosted a Twitter chat called Title Talk that I would participate in. And we just kind of developed a friendship there. And then we hung out at lots of conferences and she visited my classroom a few times. And we eventually turned that friendship into the Nerdy Book Club, which we started together with a couple other friends, Cindy Minnick and Catherine Sokolowski. And then a team here in Michigan, my wife, my principal, my wife's aunt, just a lot of really amazing Michigan educators started Nerd Camp, which was kind of a conference, a free conference that we did based on the Nerdy Book Club model of every reader has value and voice in our community. And from there, Donalyn and I started writing Game Changer. And then we wrote the classroom library book.
What are a few ways to increase book access for a classroom teacher, for a school librarian?
Yeah, I think the key is that it doesn't come out of the pockets of a classroom teacher and a school librarian. It has to start at the top. Otherwise, it's an equity issue. Right? Like if you get me as your fifth grade teacher, you're going to be surrounded by thousands of books. If you get a different teacher in maybe a different city or different community, you might have 30 books or 50 books or no book published in the last 5 years. So it really needs to be something that happens at the district level. Our district provides $250 for classroom libraries, which is really a drop in the bucket when you think about what you need,
Right.
but it's better than nothing. That's $250 teachers don't have to spend. And my principal provides us each with another $200. So there we have it at the district level and we have it at the building level. So I think that is the biggest part is if we really value readers, we know how important it is that they have access to books. And we'll show that by helping teachers fund their libraries. Otherwise, we can't expect a brand new teacher, making $30,000 to $40,000, a bunch of student loan debts, starting their family, possibly, new car for the first time, living on their own for the first time, expecting them to walk into a new school, a new grade, and to be able to provide that access is just, it's not going to happen. And that's not fair to those kids. And that's not fair to that teacher, that they have to feel guilty about not having the money to, and they shouldn't have to, like, we shouldn't be spending, doctors or nurses aren't buying stethoscopes and plastic or whatever those gloves are that they wear. Plastic, what I don't know.
Rubber gloves.
Rubber gloves. There we go, Tom.
There we go.
So I think that is the key. We need to provide funds. Teachers shouldn't have to write grants. Teachers shouldn't be sharing Amazon wish list and donors choose programs. We need to make sure that.
So I would say I have a bigger one. Teachers should never have to send home a wish list to parents. Any classroom I was in, and I worked at schools that were Title I, but it's a spectrum.
Mhm.
And so you send one of those things home, and some people can bring stuff back, some people can't. And I don't think that's a good policy for any school, any district. And yet it's fairly common out here, at least I would imagine elsewhere.
Yeah, we're not actually allowed to share Amazon wish list with families in our district. We don't want them to feel like the school doesn't provide them with the things that they need. So, but yeah, I mean, we're doing pretty well. My family, we're doing fine. And I hate back to school list that I have to buy for all of my children. It's like, oh, there goes
You have
$300.
5 children, you're going to be there a while.
It's not fun to drop all that money.
I mentioned before we started that I had taught third grade and fifth grade at one point, and my original classroom libraries, I can assure you, 90%, we got $0 for classroom library. So they came from Salvation Army and Goodwill, and some of that was good, some of that was less good. But I would also, and this would be out of my pocket, but also back in the day, Scholastic would have like the one book in the thing that was, $1.
Yeah.
And so I would buy 20 copies and give one to each of the kids, or that kind of thing. I hope it's gotten better. In some ways it has, but in some ways it has not. How important is it to have a quality classroom library?
I mean, it's that fingertip access that we talk about in our books, Donalyn and I. Like, if a kid is, telling me something, or we're sharing a story, and I like a kid in my class, his family was part of some Sasquatch movie that's being made, and he's like an extra in it. So like when he tells us that I can walk over and I have all these books about weird creatures and weird monsters and myths and legends, that I can like get that book right away. Or if a kid comes in and they loved Hatchet, I can give them Megan Freeman's Alone, or Stranded, which is a new one that just came out. I have it somewhere here in my classroom, but Stranded is a brand new book that is
Nikki Shannon Smith.
Yeah, Nikki Shannon Smith. So, like being able to give those kids that book right away that they want to read next. We don't have to wait a week to go to the library. We don't have to miss that moment. We don't have to lose time reading. They can get to that next book right away. For me, is so valuable. It's not to replace the school library. I think that's really important. I think that they work hand in hand together and they make each other stronger. So yeah, that fingertip access, being able to get the right book into the right kid's hand within seconds to just kind of feed off that energy that we have in this classroom is really important.
So my Nikki Shannon Smith story, I sat next to her at a California School Library Association conference. They have a big author dinner, and so we end up sitting next to each other. She's been on the podcast because we've continued the relationship.
That's awesome.
But also, I have friends who had triplets. Oh. So it's a little thing that stands out a bit. And they ended up, as we were having a conversation, they were in her class. They were her students because they came from the same city.
That is a small world, book world.
It is. And she's amazing. And she's getting some good traction on this latest book, and has another one coming out next year, it sounds.
It's exciting. What a great time to be a kid, right? There's so many amazing books that are out. Like, I remember when I read Hatchet and finished it, when Mrs. Collins read it to me in 4th grade, there was like no next book to hand to me, right? There wasn't even the new Hatchet had only been out a couple years. We didn't even have the other Hatchet books. But now a kid finishes Hatchet, I have 10, 15 books I can give them that are here in the classroom. It's what I actually, I'm gonna write about this soon or talk about it soon. Is it used to be like Hatchet led to these other books, right? And now like these other books that my kids are reading are leading to Hatchet. It's so wild.
Oh, interesting.
Like these brand new book, like Megan Freeman's Alone's been a really popular book the last few years, and it was like 3 or 4 kids read it here in class like the first couple of weeks of school, and now those kids are reading Hatchet. I'm like, I did not see that coming. It's fun.
In your classroom, I get the impression that you have students reading a lot, which is a wonderful thing. Do the students come to you as readers, or do you create readers,
I
or
think,
both?
yeah, that's interesting. Um, I think they all come as readers. I think we're all readers, even if we don't read. I think that we just have that desire to be entertained by story and that desire to seek knowledge in informational text. So I think that they're all readers. I guess maybe what I'm best at is helping them to see themselves as readers and to
Mm.
see the value in that reading. So I guess my job is to help them kind of, number one, see all of the great things that they already do as a reader, name those things so they can hold on to them, but also help them to see the value that reading will have forever in their lives.
Is nerd camp still a thing?
There's different nerd camps throughout the country. But our nerd camp stopped in 2019, which was kind of nice because then we didn't have to cancel it in 2020 like everyone else was canceling everything. But we had a great 7-year run.
Nice.
We had, the last year, I think we had 2 or 3,000 educators, 1,500 kids, people from 30 plus states. But it got to be just life consuming and with
That's a full-time job at that
yeah.
point.
And it was like mid-July. We would do it, or it was always the Monday and Tuesday after July 4th. So we would get out of school at the beginning of June and then spend half of our summer getting ready for nerd camp and then the other half of the summer recovering from nerd camp. So we kind of made the decision that, it's time to, you don't, I don't know. I think a lot of times we feel like we have to hold on to things forever, especially if they're going well.
Mm.
And you don't really get to end on your own terms. But it felt like it was time to kind of stop. It feels like it's needed more than ever now, and we do miss it. But at the same time, like the ways we've been able to be with our families is selfishly my wife and I, our family. We have 3 kids in high school, 2 kids in elementary school. In 2021, we put in a pool, so now we are just cherishing that time that we have with our kids in the summer. So yeah,
Nice.
not the Michigan one's not going, but there are different ones throughout the country that either do virtual or do in person. They do 1 day, they do 2 days. So everyone's kind of made it their own.
It's funny. COVID was the time for me that I started feeling I need to focus on what's important because there were things you just couldn't do. And so part of it was focusing more on family. That's
Yeah.
the thing for sure. We didn't put in a pool though.
Oh, you missed out.
Our
Man.
kids are a little older than your kids though.
Yeah, we actually spend more time at the pool than our kids. Like my wife and I she's a teacher too, so we get a lot of great pool mornings.
Nice. Is there a book or a series of books from your childhood that still resonates with you?
Well, I loved 2 books as a kid. One was Hatchet, and the other was a biography about O.J. Simpson. So I'm going to just say Hatchet because the other one didn't age as well. But no, it was Hatchet. It's always been Hatchet. It was the book that helped me to fall in love with reading. It was the book that made me think about reading when I wasn't in school. It was the book that I thought about when I became a teacher that I just was so excited to read it aloud. I got to take a whole class to a Gary Paulson visit at a library in my 3rd year of teaching. I got to interview him for the Yarn podcast shortly before he passed away. And to just see his books continue to work magic is everything to me. Our school that I teach in, my dad went to this school. I went to this school. I'm the oldest of 7. My brothers and sister went to this school. My kids have all gone through this school. And we only have a year and like 2 months left before we move out of this school and move into a new school. So we're going to go from 400 kid elementary schools to one 1,200 student elementary school. It'll be the biggest elementary school in the state of Michigan. And I often think about, how many stories were shared here, how many kids read Hatchet here, all of those memories that we'll keep with us as we head to this new endeavor. But it's a pretty special place, and I always think about Hatchet when I'm literally sitting in a classroom doing this interview next door to the room where Hatchet was read to me, next door to the room where my life was changed forever. So it's Hatchet, to answer your question, always and forever.
Mine was Beverly Cleary's The Mouse and the Motorcycle.
Yes, Miss Baker read us that in second grade. Absolutely. Like this, I couldn't believe that existed. Like, this is so cool.
Yes, amazing book. She recently passed away. Beverly Cleary recently passed away out at the coast in California where I live. 104, I want to say.
What a life. What a life.
When I realized that she was still alive, I went, well, how? Because I have read her books.
Yeah.
I'm in my 60s and I have read them much of my life.
I mean, Dear Mr. Henshaw is just still like, you could still open that book up today and it's just
still works.
It's just magic. Yeah. I mean, the Ramona books. Yeah. She was a gift. Her house was for sale. Did you buy her old house? Is that you should have. That would be a great place to do a book podcast.
What are you reading now?
I am reading Boy 2.0 by Tracy Baptiste. It's about a middle school kid who's kind of bouncing around some foster homes. He's into a new one, and he has this event where he's kind of gets pretty scared and kind of like feared for his life, and he starts to turn invisible. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on with why he's turning invisible. It looks like he may be part of some lab experiment back, 12, 13 years ago. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's pretty wild to see. He doesn't really have control over becoming invisible or becoming visible again. So yeah, Boy 2.0. How about you? What are you reading, Tom?
What am I reading? Kate DiCamillo, Hotel Balzar?
Yeah, she visits our school in 194 days.
Oh, wow.
Yep. I with the school closing, I always dreamed that Gary Paulson or Kate DiCamillo would come. And obviously Gary has passed away. So she's coming. Yeah, she'll be our last author, and someone who loves story so much and believes in the power of story and the magic that Read Aloud can do. To have her spend some time with our readers will be a great last author visit.
Yeah, she's one of those folks. She's a Beverly Cleary. She's a Gary Paulson. They couldn't possibly write a bad book. It just is not in their DNA.
And
anything
Beverly,
else you'd like to? Oh, go ahead.
Well, Kate DiCamillo's dog's name was Ramona, or is Ramona. I don't know if this dog is still living, so that's pretty cool.
It is indeed. Anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
Just thank you for trying to get kids excited about reading. We live in an amazing time of children's literature, but we also live entering a time where the reading lives of kids is becoming less and less important to the people who have the power. We're moving towards scripted curriculums across this country. We're moving towards everything is laid out for us, where there is less and less time for kids to be creative and less time for kids to fall in love with reading and writing and learning. And you know what? Like, a couple more kids might pass the state test. Like, I do think that it is possible, if that is our 100% our focus, that a couple more kids will pass the state test. But at what cost? At what cost are we willing to sacrifice, like, our souls as educators to do a little bit better on a test? I don't know.
And a test that ultimately says very little.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I don't look at it. Yeah, I mean, I don't use the data to help drive my instruction in any way. Never have. I don't think I ever will.
I want to thank you for joining us today, Colby. We will have several links for Colby in the show notes. I'd also like to ask if you could like, subscribe, and share wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, thank you, Colby.
Thanks, Tom.